Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Dashy has given his thoughts on the sniper rifles coming into the Black Ops 6 season, believing that the most recent year in MW3, snipers should not have been banned in competitive play as they were by the professional players this season. Dashy reckons that in Black Ops 6, definitely changes might need to be made in terms of what the pros think about whether snipers need to be banned or not, but if they're too strong, he does admit to the possibility of maybe they need to go yet again. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Thought this is pretty funny here. Kremp in Austin, Texas, doing some content with the Rafa Racing Club, asking people some Formula 1 questions. So, yeah, good to see Kremp getting involved in other sorts of content as ever. And as we talked about earlier today, less than a week now until Black Ops 6 officially arrives. So, yeah, cheese in like Packer HyDra when this officially arrives. The big question I will say on the new game is, what are the maps going to be like? We've seen how the game plays in the beta. We've seen what the movement's going to be. And we know that they say, oh, it's a beta, it's an alpha build. You know, everyone knows it's a test build, let's be honest, right? You get to see what the game is like before it comes out. How many times have we seen a COD beta which dramatically changes before the full release? Basically zero, especially when this game, this Black Ops 6 game has been ready for months. I mean, there were rumors going around even like, I want to say 8 to 9, 10 months ago that the game was basically finished. We're talking start of the year. The game was almost done. They were just finalizing pieces for it. And honestly, maybe Treyarch's focus has already shifted to next year's game, which we think is going to be at least Treyarch inspired, if not Treyarch designed as well. So, you know, there's a feeling that maybe this game, Black Ops 6, has been the same for a long time, and I don't really expect much, if anything, to change between the beta and the full release. So then the question is, well, what about the maps, right? Because I'm not going to lie, Josh is making me kind of miss Hotel, like Greenberg Hotel or whatever it was called, for Modern Warfare 2, which of course was literally copied and pasted from the real-life Conservatorium Hotel in Amsterdam, but it does actually work out rather well as a pretty damn good competitive map. And yeah, especially playing the beta, there wasn't that much to be excited about, and as Miles says, there's going to be a ridiculous amount of people viewing this property on day one because Skyline was the map of the beta in some respects. We saw some of the overviews of maps the other day, a couple of new ones they're bringing in. There is a bit of optimism, but I'm not overly optimistic we're going to have a great set of maps. I think we might be, again, semi-reliant on the arrival of DLC, which will happen at some point, I'm sure, but, you know, what maps they're going to bring through when DLC turns up. I know there's been some rumors as to some they're looking to bring back, maybe like even a Yemen, I think was potentially rumored. Hacienda as well from Black Ops 4 was talked about. So I'm sure that as time goes on, we're going to have a decent set of maps. So when the game releases, I do think it is an understandable point of concern. Activision as well talked about the anti-cheat and basically admitted, we can't tell you that cheaters are going to disappear forever because of the tech we're preparing at launch, but we're going to do our best. So, you know, we're deeply committed to making this work. So do you believe them? I mean, sure, obviously they want to make the game better, but do they say this every year and nothing much changes in terms of actually catching the cheaters? You know, you could definitely fall on that side of things as well. There's a bit of drama last night as well on the highest rated players of the 2024 season. So just looking at the best Lion Man cards of the year. So pretty much the best players of the season in some capacity. Now, I know they're Lion Man cards, so you've got to take it with a bit of a grain of salt, obviously, in terms of the way these cards are designed. I'll just share quickly again exactly how the ratings on these cards are determined. So the players are ranked in 3 categories in each game mode, and the numbers in those categories are then listed in terms of their role, and if they are the number 1 in that category, they get a 99, and if they are the worst in that category, they get a 50. So you then look, and that's basically what HyDra has for, he's 99 in kills per 10 and damage per 10 in hardpoint, but he's basically dead last in hill time per 10, which is fine on the rating, because the way that it then works is you take the highest 2 numbers of each of the categories, so you get 6 numbers overall. You then average them out, and that's what gives you your overall rating. And when we do it for stages or majors, there will then be a plus or minus adjustment factor based on series 1. So that's how people get to 99, because even Scrappy, purple, as in best in the entire league in his role, in kills and damage per 10 in both hardpoint and in control, but in search and destroy, not quite, only in the 90s. So that puts him down to a 98. But obviously, if you were to consider the fact that his record was quite good this year, then you could bump him up. But whatever. I think this gives a relatively good picture of impact, I think is what we're trying to get across. So the point really is that KD is completely irrelevant. The only way that KD is relevant is in kills per 10 minutes, basically. So kills are more relevant here than KD is. So 04, despite his KD averaging to about a 1, shall we say, probably lower than a 1 when you consider that Search and Destroy has fewer kills than Hardpoint. 04 gets a 90 rated because he was, lots of kills, lots of damage per 10 in most of the game modes, and even though his damage per 10 was slightly lower in Control, he had good ticks per round in terms of his objective work, and Cellium was purple in every mode by a KD perspective. So, 1.16 tied with Scrappy for best in the AR category, 1.31 in Search, 1.27 in Control, but in terms of kills per 10 and impact, slightly lower, so he gets a 90. But still, Scrap, HyDra, Simp, Shotzzy, Dashy, I mean, these were, I think, comfortably your 3 best players in the game. Shotzzy wasn't far behind either, so genuinely, if you look at the season, you say, okay, who are the best players in the world over the course of the year? The top 4 is bang on, I think. And then, maybe not in the order, you can debate that. But definitely, in terms of the best players in the world, this gives you a pretty good idea. So I think the Lion Man cards did a reasonably good job this year. I know that Beans was in the reply saying, wow, war a trophy, basically, right? Because he's managed to get top 10 players this season based on Lion Man cards because his impact and his damage is pretty high. And then I think TJ was in the replies saying, surely I've got to be 11, right? But it's still TJ's card, 83 overall, was pretty solid as well, and definitely a good bounce back season, I thought, for Tej, and good enough to maintain a spot in the league because he's going to be back on the Ravens, we're pretty sure, for the upcoming season. Slasher and Tej running it back again. They wanted to play with Gwinn, understandably, and of course Gwinn was coming in here as, according to the Lion Man cards, the 8th best player of the year. Now lots of that might be online, and of course the record wasn't so pretty compared to Drazah, who had a much better record with a similar number, but and actually I didn't even look at Beans' record. Bloody hell, 3 and 17. Wow, actually impressive on some level that Beans was able to keep up solid individual numbers while getting absolutely slammed that badly. But that is Boston Breach, baby, 2024. They will go down in the memory. But speaking of the 2024 season, right, we had no snipers this year, and it's been a big drama in the CDL over the last few years as to whether snipers are going to be played, because I think 90% of fans will probably tell you that they'd prefer snipers in competitive play. It makes things more interesting, get some early picks, certainly on LAN. You guys might remember right at the start of Vanguard, after the snipers had been banned during Cold War, Priestahh pulled out the sniper, I think it was on Tuscan, got a nice little 1 versus 2, and it was such a cool moment. I think it was at the Kickoff Classic maybe. It was such a cool moment of the scene because, we'd not had snipers, and it was awesome to see in front of a bit of a crowd and whatever, some, certainly on LAN, right, some sort of sniper action coming into play. So I think most players would, well, consider it. The problem is, of course, for the players' perspective, is they want to ensure they're not too powerful. And it really started happening in Black Ops Cold War. Cold War, the snipers were, arguably too good, arguably too easy to use. It didn't take as much skill to aim with them, and they were very powerful. And for the pros POV, they just decided they were too good to use. And look, that is debatable. Obviously, there was discussion as well, what if you take all the attachments off? I think that's what they eventually agreed. The pros, in terms of gentlemen's agreements going into Vanguard, was okay, we're going to use them, but we're going to use them with no attachments. I think the pros, though, initially wanted to not use them at all and ban them entirely. But then the community kind of pressured the pros into trying it, and then they realized, actually, they're nowhere near as powerful as we thought that they were. So I think they definitely could come back. And Dashy actually thinks that even in the most recent game, they shouldn't have been banned. He thinks they, maybe on some maps, like an Invasion or let's say a High Rise, maybe, yeah, given the way the map is designed, the snipers might have made things a bit too one-dimensional. The talk also is, if smokes are allowed, then snipers should be allowed. Because the smoke is the counter, right? Because a sniper can hold a cross, but if you can throw a smoke down to run across that cross without being seen, then that's, a good counter in my opinion. The problem, as many of you guys will be aware, is that the smoke grenades are sometimes rather buggy, so they will allow for one-way smokes, and they're not like Counter-Strike smokes. And to be honest, Counter-Strike, as good of a game as that is competitively, ever since CSGO came out in 2012, they struggled for 11 to 12 years with making the smoke grenades work. I mean, in CS, they're just like a grey ball, basically. At least they were in CSGO. But even then, they were slightly you know, let's say not fully opaque on the edges like they are in Valorant, so you could get one-way smokes. And even in CS, as good of a competitive game as that is and was, CSGO most certainly, was still having problems with one-way smokes. So in COD, knowing the developers we have over here, the smokes have just never been great. And we know that there's a problem of people just throwing them at their feet and taking a one-way smoke, and it's not ideal to watch, and often the smokes therefore get banned. And therefore the pros argument is, well, if the smokes are banned because they're a bit buggy and they create some inconsistency, then we can't use snipers because there's no counter to the snipers. And I don't know if that argument necessarily holds water if the snipers aren't like incredibly easy to use, but still, if smokes are in the game and they work properly, because obviously in Counter-Strike 2 that they've now developed, the smokes work differently and, you know, more consistently maybe, although there's potentially some debate on that in the CS community. Maybe the same thing could happen here in Black Ops 6.
I don't get GAing snipers if they're smokes. Some of these, I agree to an extent. I feel like with sniping, you have to also look at the maps too. I feel like the maps complement the snipers more than like a smoke, you know what I'm saying? Like that's why like last year on some maps, like you'd always see a sniper, like on MW2, like you'd see a sniper on Embassy a lot just because they just like fit a sniper like style, like the lanes, just like the way the map played out and like just the crosses like for S&D and shit. But imagine spying out on fucking high rise and you can't even look out your window, you know what I mean? Like you can't even use two, like you can only use one smoke, especially with the smoke being a one-way. Like, but I don't think the sniper should have been banned on every map. Like I think the sniper should have been allowed on Karachi. I feel like 6-star would have been a good sniper map. Same thing with ReeaL. But like Invasion and High Rise, I could definitely see a sniper GA. Just because like the maps, the rounds would just, the rounds would be over in like 32 seconds. I think they'll be sniping this year. It depends on the sniper again. Depends how easy it is, right? I feel like the sniper, the main issue with it ever since I went to PC is just the degree of difficulty to snipe nowadays is just like the skill gap's going down every year with it, it feels like. And obviously with no skill gap, like a no skill gap gun, like a pro player is gonna pretty much just always just abuse it. Obviously like there's gonna be levels to it, right? This just because like every pro would be able to snipe doesn't mean like there wouldn't be one pro that stands out than like another one, but you guys get it.
So Dashy definitely says that last year would have been nice to maintain some sniper rifle play and competitive play, and he reckons that this year it's absolutely on the cards. The question is, I guess, how easy it is to use them, because as Dashy reckons, after the switch to PC, the skill gap's been going down year after year. So, and you know, honestly, I don't think he's necessarily wrong on that. I think hopefully this year's going to change it with the way the movement's going to be working and a couple of other things as well. But yeah, definitely feel like Dashy could be on the money here when it comes down to snipers getting back into competitive play. But will the pros agree? Because Dashy, you know, is he going to be biased because he's a great sniper rifle player? I mean, not impossible to imagine that Dashy's kind of keen for snipers to come back in, knowing that he's one of the best sniper rifle players theoretically in the world. And teams that don't have a good sniper, they will be, generally speaking, inclined to somewhat disagree. But very much intrigued to your perspective as ever in the comments below. Just continuing here the all-time grid. Feel free as well, guys, to get involved in the voting for this over the coming days. I know that it started quite controversially, really, because, you know, John most underrated, Hook most overrated. I feel like there are so many other answers that you could give to those questions. But since then, I think the voting has been relatively on point. Karma, the smartest pro ever. Formal, best gunny of any pro ever. Definitely Formal, Dashy. Few of the names potentially come to mind, even the likes of like an aBeZy or something could be considered, but I think that Formal is probably the right answer. The greatest is no real doubt is going to be Kremp. Killer, the funniest, right? And then we get to today's answers, the highest skill and the biggest villain. The biggest villain is no doubt Aches. Like there's simply no other answer to that one. Highest skill is interesting. I would probably say Scump, to be honest. But skill is interesting because is highest skill similar to best gunny, right? Because, or is highest skill like best overall player, including other factors? Because, you know, skill is not just gunny. Obviously, there's more to it than that. And if you're looking from a pure gunny perspective, then maybe it's Formal, but it's not like Formal also didn't have one of the highest skill ceilings ever, because he's not just, you know, a shoot straight merchant, is he? Like Formal has other aspects to his play as well. I'd probably say Scump here. Certainly on an all-time level, I think that's probably fair, and it's going to be interesting to see the way the other answers come through here as well, because, you know, best OBJ is something quite interesting because there isn't really that many OBJ players anymore. You know, I'm thinking the likes of maybe a TP or even maybe a nade shot might be in conversation for that, but then you've got best support. So, you know, it's going to be interesting, but very much intrigued to your thoughts as ever in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.